Hey everyone, I got something particularly goofy and weird today. This is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while now, so I don't think it's come up at any point on this channel yet, but I'm like a huge fan of No More Heroes. I'm a big fan of Suda51 and his whole company and games and all that stuff. I think like No More Heroes 1 specifically is one of the most creative video games to have like ever existed. Like if you want to talk about video games being art, this is probably my top example. Like on the surface, this is crass and crude and garbage, but this game has like a lot to say, whether or not it was intentional, unintentional. This game is like deep, and I have like literally never stopped playing it since it came out on the Wii. I'm always replaying this game. I love No More Heroes. So, and I'm sure, you know, a lot of you out there appreciate No More Heroes, especially nowadays. It actually seems to be doing pretty well. You know, we have like No More Heroes 3 on like the Series X and the PS5 and the Switch and all this stuff at PC. It's I never thought the series would even get remotely this big. I feel like it's just like a miracle. It definitely deserves it though, because I really enjoy like every single entry in the series, and like I said, I'm a big fan of Suda51's other stuff. Not that he's the sole one working on all these games, but you know what I mean. So I don't know how many of you are aware of the super strange Japanese-only 360 port. It's maybe not necessarily a port, a bit of an actual remaster, but port's the word I'm going to use. So, like, the Japanese 360 only port of No More Heroes 1 that we later in America got as, like, the international PS3 version of this game, which also had its own differences. But to me, it is so wild that there was a 360 version of this that was only in Japan. Now, I don't know how aware of everyone in my audience is of this kind of stuff, but the 360, and honestly any Xbox console in Japan does not do well, like, at all. The 360 was strange that there's maybe not like a lot, but there's a certain amount of Japanese-only 360 games that are like hyper Japanese culture, if you kind of know what I mean, that I have no idea why they're on the 360. It makes no sense to me, and some of these are like 360 exclusive, like No More Heroes, or that previous game in the like the Dodonpachi series, the one that's like before Resurrection. That's like Japanese only 360 as far as like the home port. So if we're not counting like the cell phone port, for a while I think Death Smiles 2 was also Japanese only 360. Like a couple like cave shooters and stuff. You know, like I don't know what was going on, and then along with the No More Heroes port, it's like I don't see how these could have done well in Japan whatsoever, but it's also makes it super fascinating to look at this stuff. So let's get into what we're going to be looking at during this video. So to lay down a couple of ground rules as far as what we're looking at here, I use real hardware for everything, so everything's exactly how it was originally running. However, everything's captured through HDMI and running through an upscaler and then going to my capture card. But that's just to clean up the image. It's not going to drastically alter the image. So I'm running the Wii version through the Wii U. Obviously, that's an HDMI out. And then the 360 and PS3 obviously natively has an HDMI out. So everything's just pure HDMI. We're getting like exactly how the game's like supposed to look, just cleaned up slightly. Not that my capture card's great or anything, but I just want you to understand what we're looking at here. So, briefly in the beginning, I'll be playing some footage of the Wii version. Not for super long, but I just want that fresh in your head as you're watching the footage of the 360 and later the PS3 version. Because I know how it is. If you don't play something for a while, and especially if you're like got used to like a remaster or a remake or something, not remake, but like a remaster or a port or something, you might not specifically remember how it was on original hardware. So I want this fresh in your head. Now, the one work that comes with like Wii footage or some GameCube footage is the fact that the widescreen, if I'm understanding this correct, is still 4:3 because it's just anamorphic widescreen, and it creates a weird issue when you're trying to say capture footage of it, that the image is still kind of squished in a little bit because the capture card and my TV and lots of TVs don't quite understand what to do with the image, because it isn't technically like a widescreen image. You're just trying to stretch it out to make it look okay. Now, I don't know or look correct aspect ratio wise. Now, I don't know what the Wii U does internally with the Wii stuff, but there is some native widescreen Wii games. Off the top of my head, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom is actually widescreen, if I'm remembering correctly, and that always looks perfectly like fine aspect ratio wise. But No More Heroes is a little messed up because it's just anamorphic widescreen. So on my TV, I can like stretch out the image slightly to correct the aspect ratio, but there wasn't a way to do it through OBS that I was understanding without cutting off the top and bottom of the image as far as trying to like stretch out the input of the capture card. So it's gonna look a little squishy. It's gonna look a little weird, but you'll get the gist of it. So one thing, I haven't actually played like the Wii version of this in like a while, and one thing I was kind of shocked about is the fact that this has an uncapped frame rate. So I thought this was just going to be 30 FPS with some drops or something, because I didn't remember it running super good or anything, but it has an uncapped frame rate up to 60, and sometimes, like, I swear, it actually does run at 60. Like, it's not often, and it's usually when there's like maybe like one enemy left or something, but it actually does hit 60 at some points. And you have the fake widescreen, and like on your display, as long as you stretch out the image properly, it'll look great. 480p, obviously no Wii game's ever going to do anything above that. That's just the nature of the console. But I still think this game holds up like really well graphically. Not graphically necessarily, but more artistically. And what they were doing with the Wii hardware, I think it was like a perfect fit. It looked, at the time, I really liked the way it looked. But that was also, the Wii Generation 360, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, this game artistically is very strong. And I think as far as actual like pure art style, the Wii version, which is what, was later used for like the Switch and PC ports, I think is the best artistically, because it goes a little too hard in trying to make it look slightly more realistic for the 360 and PS3 release. Not that I think those will look bad, but as far as a pure artistic point of view, I think the Wii version looks the best. But yeah, the frame rate thing like really caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting to get any amount of 60. Now, if we're going to talk about something else important in, ports like this and stuff, the controls, because obviously this is a Wii game. So, as far as like these three versions that we're talking about today, Wii, 360, PS3, I think the Wii version's the best. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. It was designed with the Wiimote and Nunchuck in mind. However, one thing I do like about the 360 and PS3 version, which later gets adopted to the Switch and PC ports, obviously, is the fact that you don't have to, like, physically move your controller for the high-low stuff, that it's just different buttons. That's one thing I kind of don't like about the original, if I'm being, like, really nitpicky. Granted, like, it doesn't really ever affect what you're doing that hard, because it's not like it's difficult to change the, I guess, orientation of the Wiimote for that, and it's not like this is, like, the most deep, complex action game. It's not DMC5 or something. But yeah, I kind of do like the normal button presses better from that. And I'll get more into the control stuff when I get to the next versions, but here's the baseline of what we're working with. You got the Wii footage. You're probably seeing the 360 footage by now. So let's talk about it. Obviously, that's the main focus of this video. So this was developed by a company called Feel Plus. Now, I looked into them a little bit. It looks like, unfortunately, they haven't been involved with too much. However, two things that stood out to me was they, under a different name, ported Fighting Vipers 2 to the Dreamcast, which we never got in America, if I'm remembering right. It was just Europe and Japan. Good port and stuff. I kind of like Fighting Vipers 1 more, but they ported that, and then they were involved with the development of that 360 exclusive RPG Lost Odyssey, so that was also incredibly interesting. I wasn't going to look too deep into them because you really can't. They made some Ju-On game for the Wii. I've never played it, but maybe I should. I'm a big fan of Grudge, Ju-On, whatever you want to call it. Well, more so like the actual Japanese stuff. But from what I was looking into with that game, it has some pretty bad reviews. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't check it out. So, this port was developed by that company, and it is like an actual remaster. If you look at the Wii footage and then the 360 version, like a lot of just straight up texture work and model work and stuff is like completely either touched up or redone, especially because all the footage I'm getting is just of the first stage, and if you see like anything that's like outside, like with trees and grass and stuff, it's like significantly touched up in the 360 version. So, normally the first thing I'd be talking about is the frame rate and resolution, which I am talking about. However, there's like no info online for exactly what it is, so I have to use what I'm guessing it is just with my eyes. I don't have like digital foundry tools to tell me pixel counts and stuff, unfortunately. Maybe I could try to look into that at some point. I don't know how they do it, honestly, but that'd be very helpful. Like, at the time period, I don't think everybody was trying to figure out resolutions and frame rates for everything. Granted, there was still, for bigger releases, you tend to have, well, like, even Digital Foundry, like I said before, would look at PS3 and 360 games. So it's not like nowadays where, like, everybody knows the resolution and frame rate of everything that comes out on consoles and stuff, you know? So, with my eyes and with using common sense, I'm assuming that this is 720p. That's what it looks like. It's definitely not anything above, and I don't think it's anything below. I think it's just a straight 720p, and it looks good. And then the frame rate is 30 FPS, which is this is the fun part. Like, I know the visuals are greatly touched up, and the resolution is also much higher than the Wii version, but the fact that the frame rate cap is lower than the Wii version is, like, fascinating to me. Like, obviously the Wii version still runs worse most of the time if we're, like, really gonna, like, nitpick it, but just the fact that on the more powerful hardware the frame rate cap is lower is just hilarious. But I also, like, completely understand why that's happening, because this port was way more focused on, like, graphics, and I think that was just a thing with the PS3 and 360. They're, like, the majority of the games were not 60. You were not hitting 60. Like some early 360 games definitely were, but those were like ports of PS2 games just running at a higher resolution. And, you know, when I phrase it like that, this makes it sound bad, but this is clearly like a remaster. Like I said, it's not just like running the Wii game at a higher resolution. If that was the case, this definitely probably would have been 720 60. And, you know, a good way of looking at that is probably the Switch port, which I don't know if that's just like Wii emulation. Regardless, though, that's something at least somewhat comparable if we're talking about like handheld performance. And I know architecture-wise it's way newer and way more efficient, but as far as just general power level, which is hard to talk about, and I guess I can make a Dragon Ball joke somewhere in there, but if it was just a straight Wii port, I think it definitely would have been 720 60, but obviously that's not what this is. This is like a much bigger undertaking graphically. Like, most of the things I'm seeing online is talking about it like it's like a straight port, but like, and I'm not like trying to like talk crap about anyone, but like, just like, that's clearly not what this is. I don't know, maybe they meant more so content-wise, which would make sense, but this is, like I said, like significantly touched up graphically, and once you see the two, like, back to back, you can really see what I'm talking about. And I meant to say this in the beginning, and if you made it this far, you clearly want to hear what I have to say. So just give me a moment to talk about this. There is no way that YouTube is going to like this video. When I'm getting footage of this, I'm just thinking about all the gratuitous amounts of violence and the bad language and just everything about it. Like, I have been so purposefully squeaky clean with this YouTube channel, but I also really want to talk about this port, and I'm just like, what am I supposed to do about it? I'd have to try to manually censor everything and have it muted, which I'm not going to do, but I'm just saying, like, if I was going to do that. Editing is not my strong suit, it is not my passion, but even so, that would be a huge undertaking just to try to appear squeaky clean. So if this video gets hit with the good old demonetization, not that I'm even monetized, but I think I could still get restricted. You know, it's going to happen. We're going to talk about No More Heroes regardless. Hopefully it's going to stay on my YouTube channel. I'm not going to say any bad words, but I can't speak for the game. Can't speak for the amount of violence. I know YouTube's a little weird about video game violence and stuff like that, but it's like, it's so clearly fake, but you know what I'm saying. So, we got 720p, 30. It's kind of a remaster developed by Feel Plus. Controls, I think, are better than the PS3 version. We'll talk about that in a second. But so you got like a dedicated button for low and for high with both the physical attacks, if you want to call them that, and like the beam katana attacks. I feel like a nerd just saying that, but yeah. So like essentially, how I feel like they work are more like light and heavy, even though that's not what the game categorizes them as, but to me it feels like a light and heavy attack. So in while the Wii control scheme feels very natural, I kind of really do like the 360 control scheme, and I believe it was something very similar with the Switch port. I'm having trouble remembering. And then, like, for, like, when you're finishing off enemies, you, like, click in the right stick and just, like, swipe the direction they want, which I'm, like, completely fine with. The one thing I kind of don't like, and you'll see this in the footage, I couldn't figure out what button it was for, like, the dark side stuff at all. I pressed a couple buttons, I don't know what it was, and because I was just trying to get footage, it kind of didn't matter if I remembered how to do it. I obviously skipped the tutorial. I was just like, let's just get some footage, just play this game for a bit. But what I don't like is, like, say after you do, like, the wrestling moves and you're going to, like, hit a downed enemy, you have to press, like, 2 buttons instead of just 1 like the Wii version. And I don't know if they did that to try to make sure you don't accidentally do it, but what I find is that I mess it up way more. And even if I feel like I'm pressing the button combination, that maybe I'm not, like, close enough or something, like, it doesn't quite feel right, but it's not that big of a deal, because at the end of the day, like I said, this is not some complex action game. It's not super difficult or anything. It's just like a little nitpick I had. And with that, something else that's also, like, incredibly fascinating about this, remember, this is Japanese only, and on the 360, which still doesn't make any sense, but all the voice acting is completely in English, which is great for me, maybe not for, you know, the Japanese people that might not understand English. I don't know how common that even is over there anymore. I think, like, English is part of the normal curriculum. But, like, for me, for, like, being a filthy American, that's great. I can understand everything. Not that I haven't played this game 30 different times, but it's very English friendly. Like, all the text, like, as far as, like, subtitles and, like, when you pick up, like, papers and stuff like that, like, with the wrestling mask and stuff like that, that's all in Japanese. But, like, as long as you have some knowledge of the game, and especially if you just played it through once, like on the Wii or something, like, you're good to go. You'll have no problems, like, completely finishing this game. It is very friendly for an English audience, especially considering, like I said, like, all the dialogue's in English. So that's, again, that goes back to it being strange, but, and one last point I want to make about this is the fact that, from my understanding, the, like, initial Japanese Wii version has had a lot of stuff censored because of the way their, like, video game rating systems work. That's different to how our rating system works, and they would get essentially the equivalent of, like, our adult only rating if they had a bunch of gratuitous amounts of, like, you know, I'm gonna be careful with my words, but, like, big flashy grossness. But I feel, I can't remember if there's, like, an actual later version of the Wii version in Japan that is the same as the American version, completely uncensored, or if that was only for the PS3 Japanese version that was later also uncensored. But this is, in Japan, completely uncensored, which, again, just goes back to how incredibly strange this release is. It's very American. It's very American. And maybe this has something to do with, I think I remember reading once, or maybe it's just I'm making an assumption based off of all the references and stuff, that I think Suda51 as a director, just very into American culture. I mean, look at Travis. That's just Johnny Knoxville. I don't know what other Japanese people are aware of Johnny Knoxville. I feel like that's a super American thing. Clearly, he's just very interested in our culture, which, you know, that's super cool, because I'm obviously super interested in their culture, and, you know, everybody's got different cultures. It's all cool. Everybody's different. You know what I'm saying? It's all good stuff. It's just very interesting how, like, American this feels, considering it's not at all. Now, for a good segue for something that is American, we have something American to talk about. I'm going to be saying American and Japanese a lot, probably. We got the PS3 version that's not the initial PS3 version. Here's where things get funky. So, I had this, like, a little after it came out, and in Japan, there's 3 versions of this remaster. If I'm understanding correctly, there was the initial version that was on the 360, which was also on the PS3. And this version was pretty much the same graphically. I'm assuming maybe it performed a little worse. If I am going off the assumption of the second PS3 release, which is the one we got, but maybe that's just because of the retouched graphics. I don't know. I don't have access right now to the PS3 version that's supposed to be the same as the 360 version, but I can make assumptions even if they're not 100% correct. I'm just taking a guess based off of multi-platform games and how our PS3 version is. So you have the initial version, and the PS3 version had no like PlayStation Move support, and it didn't have any of the additional content that we saw. And then what we got had touched up graphics by a different company, and I can definitely like see it. It's subtle, but it definitely looks better. However, it performs like worse. There is so much screen tearing. There's some, I forgot to mention this, there's some screen tearing in the 360 version, but it is like all over the place in the PS3 version. And again, that just was kind of par for course for this generation. It's not like it's detrimental to your experience. You can still play the game. It's fine. I'm just pointing out what's going on here. But like, maybe this is a difference between the 360 and PS3. Maybe I forgot to set my color range higher on the 360. I don't know. But like, the color output of the PS3 version, at least like the international version, is like way deeper. The colors are way better. And from what I was reading, they actually like touched up the graphics more, and I think I see it, but I don't know if it's a placebo effect. But the 360 version still looks like really good. It's just a different artistic style than the Wii version. It's definitely a little more detailed, and whether or not you're gonna like that is just up to personal preference. But so yeah, the international PS3 version added like a couple bosses from No More Heroes 2, and then touched up the graphics, and then probably ran worse. That's a feature, back of the box feature. This runs worse. And then that version may also be in Japan. I'm not super certain on that, but then Japan definitely did get this version, and even uncensored, and it was called like the Red Zone edition. So they essentially got like exactly what we got in the PS3, and any version after the initial batch was only on the PS3. So there was no like Red Zone version of the 360 version. And you know, that makes me very sad, because I would love to play like the Red Zone version on the 360 and fight those No More Heroes 2 bosses on the 360 version of the game, because you know, I may be like the only person in the world that wants that, but I do want that. Like, I really do. I would love that. But yeah, it's probably just because, you know, who was buying it on the 360? Like, nobody. But this secondary international version and then the Red Zone version also had, like, PlayStation Move support, which I've never had the pleasure of using. Hopefully, maybe eventually I could try to track down some PS3 compatible Move controllers. I know, like, the PS4 models aren't all compatible and stuff like that. I got like House of the Dead 4 and stuff that I would like to use that for at some point. But if it works anything like the Wiimote controls, then I would assume it would be good. But I can't tell you one way or another. Maybe they're hot garbage. I don't know. But one thing I don't like is while using like the normal 6-axis controller is stuff like recharging the beam katana and stuff. You have to do that with motion controls with the PS3 controller. And to me, that feels really shoehorned in, and I don't like that. I'm not a big fan of that, because you can see how you can do it with a controller normally with the 360 version. You just use, like, the right analog stick. I am not a fan of, like, motion controls with the PS3 controller. There's, like, a couple of games that do it, and I'm just never a fan of that. Like, if I'm holding a normal controller, I do not want to be using motion controls, like, whatsoever. But, like, it's not that big of a deal. Again, I'm just nitpicking. Like, you can still totally play the game just fine. It's just, like, to me, that makes the 360 controls more comfortable, just because you don't have to use the motion controls for any of it. Maybe they should have used, like, Kinect controls. I don't know if the Kinect was out then, or even available in the Japanese market, but I want to... Oh my god, you know, I can't say too much, but imagine if you had to make a similar motion, but with the Kinect to recharge. Now I'm thinking big. They should have hired me. I would have been able to sell millions of copies in America if you just would have gone like full degenerate with it. Obviously, I'm joking. So we did get something similar in America, obviously, but it has some DLC too in the form of like different like bike skins for Travis's motorcycle, and then different beam katanas, which is interesting. Like you can get like Henry's beam katana, I guess spoiler, but also maybe not because this game's kind of, oh my god, I'm old, kind of getting older. But I've never like had the DLC, but from what I read, it's just like the same movesets as already existing beam katanas, just with like a different skin and different like properties and damage values, which is still cool, you know. The 360 never had any of that. So there are some differences, like I said, touch-up graphics, No More Heroes 2 bosses and stuff. But the 360 version, an initial Japanese PS3 version, is still like 95% of the package. One change as far as both of them are concerned is like the top part of the town is blocked off for some reason. Now, I don't know if this came down to maybe they thought like the map was just kind of too big and maybe a little too empty, or I kind of have a hunch maybe it was performance related, because like this game does not perform well on either system, like worse on PS3, but it's like it's not good on either system. So I wonder if this was just a like we really can't be rendering all of that. I mean, maybe not rendering, but maybe there's collision and stuff they didn't have to load anymore. It could easily load on like the hardware and stuff. So that's one odd version, but or change, but I'm guessing that's just due to hardware and maybe not necessarily a creative decision, because like other than that, there really isn't any creative decision differences, if you understand what I mean. It is just like a faithful remaster kind of No More Heroes, just different controls and stuff like that, and the extra content in the international PS3 version. But I figured like, you know, a lot of people that are into this series and stuff, they may have never even known there was a 360 version of No More Heroes. And like, I knew about it for a while, and I knew about it when I was like younger too, and I was like so jealous. Like I wanted that so bad because it was like so obscure and weird, and it made no sense. And that is so what I'm into. You could probably tell that by now. I'm sure I have like a couple of videos of just some weird stuff, or like weird ports rather. Like that is my bread and butter. That is my jam. I just love weird, obscure, unnecessary ports of stuff. And this fits right in there, and it gave me a chance to talk about No More Heroes, which I love No More Heroes. So I hope I imparted some new knowledge upon you today. Now you know this 360 version exists, and now you're going to want to play it, hopefully, because, again, it's weird. It's fascinating. Figure it out. I believe in you. You'll be able to play this version. Just figure it out. Fortunately, 360s are region locked, but that's neither here nor there. I hope you enjoyed the video. This has been a lot of fun to talk about. Like I said, I love No More Heroes. I love weird ports. If you want more weird ports and more nerd stuff, this is the channel for you. My videos have been getting like actually pretty decent views recently, which is completely unexpected and super cool. So if you like the video, I really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. Tell me your favorite No More Heroes boss in the comments, and I mean No More Heroes 1. Just one. I'm very, very curious. If I had to pick one, honestly, I think death metal is my jam. It's just such a good opening to the game. But let me know in the comments. This is the weird 360 port of No More Heroes. And with that, later.